Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 234 of Kouryer podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Ivan Salazar Caldentey. He's a concept artist at Mighty Canvas Inc. studio based in Toronto, Canada. And of course, before getting to the signature questions of the podcast, let me quickly mention that in the for contact section of the captions, you can find the ID to his Instagram account and also the link to his art station if you want to see more in-depth analysis and pictures of his works. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're probably seeing them already on above us right now playing. So yeah, with that being said, let's jump into the first question, which I kind of start off the podcast with, which is, give us a little introduction on how you got into the world of visual arts and design. Basically, tell us your origin story of, how did you decide to become an artist, basically, how you became an artist.
Okay. First, thanks for having me on the podcast. I've never been on a podcast before, so this is pretty cool. So in terms of origin story sounds cooler than it was, but I probably have a typical story that I started drawing as early as I can remember. I always liked doodling in my notebooks in class, in math, drawing dragons and monsters. And it was very early on that I decided, when I was 5, I don't know, I felt like I needed to decide. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be an artist, simply because drawing got reactions out of people. When I was a lot younger, I didn't like sports. I wasn't the smartest kid in class. So drawing was how I got people's attention. And I liked, the reactions people got when they saw me drawing. So it's something that I just continued, and it kind of evolved naturally. I never had proper training until college. But it was probably when I was around 12 years old that I played Transformers War for Cybertron. I don't know if anyone knows the game, good game. So I was obsessed with Transformers, and when the game ended, I watched the credits because the song was good. And when the artist section of the credits was rolling by, it was hundreds and hundreds of names of people that worked on this game. And that's when it kind of clicked that, video games, films, they don't just appear out of nowhere. Someone has to come up with the idea first. And at first it seemed outrageous that could be a job. And then I looked into it, and, the words concept artist came up in Google. And as I looked more into it, I decided that's what I was going to do. And so from when I was 12 onwards, it was just about seeing how I could make that happen. So from there, we was trying to study more art in high school. From high school, getting into Sheridan College to study animation, just because there's not really a lot of degrees that center around concept art. And then from Sheridan College, getting my first job at Mighty Canvas. Now.
Yeah, actually, Sheridan College, I think, is one of the top colleges in animation, right?
Yeah, so because I was previously living in the UK, and a lot of people always ask me, why go to Canada? And it's because I just put on Google best animation school in the world, and one of the tops was Sheridan College. And I applied, and I was lucky enough to come off the waiting list and get in. And yeah, I made my way to Canada to sort of scope out the industry here, and maybe possibly in the US as well.
All right, awesome. And right now, of course, in the introduction, I mentioned it, you're a concept artist, but could you explain a little bit what is your main specification? Are you just focusing on kind of cinematic, keyframe concept arts, like those type of style, or you're going to specifically going for environments, or general, a little bit? I want to know a little bit your direction of a specialty,
Okay. Well, I am in my first year. I've only just completed my first year in the industry. So I'm pretty fresh out here. And I'd love to specialize in creature design and characters. But that's a niche that's usually a lot harder to get to. So currently I'm a bit generalized, in my work. I do a lot of character skin designs, weapon designs. I've touched on environments. I've done more graphic stuff like banners for Apex Legends. I've done some concepts for just all kinds of stuff, a little bit of keyframe stuff as well. So, it was important for me and for my art director as well that I touch different areas so that I can improve upon them, try different things to see which direction I really want to head in. But especially for my personal work, it's mostly I like creatures and characters.
Yeah, characters, especially creatures, are like it gets like I don't know how to say it. You're right. Actually, it gets a little bit tricky to actually become really like good at it. Like because like what I mean by that, because they're so abstract, such an abstract subject and topic. There's like not like characters or environments that there are a lot of already set guidelines and directions to go to. So you basically have to carve your own path as you go and try to be original and also be appealing as well as an artist. So yeah, it's kind of like like balancing it on a rope.
Yeah,
In
and
that sense.
especially because when you're doing environments or keyframes, I feel like you always need the story there, and with characters and creatures, I think that the biggest thing for me is I can't sit down and just draw characters and creatures. I kind of need a narrative behind them, because my favorite part of the story is usually the monsters in it or the characters, and when you're doing character design or something like that, you're trying to tell a story through one design, and it's a pretty difficult thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and what are some of your favorite creature designs? Actually, I want to know.
Well, recently I watched Nope, and it was the Jordan Peele movie, and the alien in that was so weirdly unique that it just sticks in your mind, because I don't think a lot of creatures in the film industry and especially games, I'd say, look really similar nowadays, and this one kind of pushed the boundaries a little bit more. Obviously, there's the classic, the Predator, Alien, the Xenomorph, but there's one that really stood out. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I usually like a lot of the creatures you see in Star Wars. I don't know what it's called, but in Attack of the Clones, there's this rhino thing that Anakin has to fight, and because it was one of the first films I watched in cinema, that scene kind of sticks in my mind.
All right. Actually, like speaking of creatures, I want to make it like a suggestion for something to explore. Actually, there's a series of games I recently found out about, and I kind of honestly got really addicted to them. Like because the lore and everything was just so amazing. Like the setting was good. Basically, in a nutshell, it was a really immersive game, and you don't really find immersive games. This is both in indie and also AAA ones. And it's called Fear and Hunger. And of course, as the name suggests, it's a pretty brutal game. It's like if the anime and the world of Berserk had its essence in a form of video game. Now people say Elden Ring is that thing, but no, it's not. Trust me. Fear and Hunger is much more brutal and like ruthless and just a cruel game, but amazing writing and lore, honestly. And the creature designs and the monster designs are actually really interesting, especially in the second game, because like one of the by the way, don't worry guys, this is like a spoiler free versions of what I'm like explaining. You don't need to worry about that, but like there's this concept that and I think that's the term only has been used in that game. It's specific to that. It's called moon scorch. Basically, they get moon scorched, some people, right? And what happens? They turn into unique monsters. And what makes each monster unique is like their hidden, lying, subconscious thoughts and desires. They kind of transform into kind of manifest physically in their monster form. So if you, for example, couldn't save certain NPCs, they turn into those moon scorch forms, and you have to fight them later. And it's like the designs are actually really smart, like the best way to put it.
Yeah, sounds
And
like a really cool concept.
yeah, exactly. And honestly, by the way, I highly recommend, just if you're not gonna play it, at least just there's like tons of video essays on it on YouTube. Like Fear and Hunger Termina, there's like so many. And yeah, that's a really good suggestion, because actually like I'm not someone who's actually really spooked by things, but there's a couple of designs that actually really spooked me. Like I was like, it spooked me in a fun way. I was like, wow, this is a spooky ass shit. I like it. It's a
Yeah, I
freaky
love
as
that.
hell.
I've
And
been having to get used to seeing scarier things, deformed things to feed into the designs. So sometimes the reference board looks a little strange, but it's what's needed to make cool monsters
yeah.
like that.
And the thing is, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the game is made in RPG Maker, and it's actually kind of pixel arty. And imagine being able to get that result with pixel art, with simple pixel art. I mean, that's just, to me, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, when you have to
And
simplify it to just a few pixels. It's kind of what I had to learn in animations. I always had trouble simplifying stuff so that it works in, you know, first glance.
yeah, and I think for me, I think the reason that it really works with the Free and Hunger games are because like a lot of the aspects of the medium itself are coming hand in hand, and they all fit and mesh together really well. Because like if you see a lot of modern AAA games, like sure, like let's say there's a huge monster, it's super like highly detailed, amazing textures and everything, animations, rigs, and all that. But it doesn't really pack that much. Do you know why? In my opinion, I think because sound design, like lore, the narrative, everything should complement each other so we could get immersed in it. Like that's the thing, immersion factor, which is really rare these days in like games, unfortunately. And that's
Yeah.
what, of course, is really missing from AAA games, and it's going to be even worse in my opinion because, yeah, I'm not really. I hope that game industry shifts like in a better direction because everything is just now about monetization, just pumping out games in crunch time for studios, so the investors can get their money back. And yeah, the quality is, of course, by the recent titles of like Star Wars games or Redfall or I don't know the Overwatch 2, like the whole PVE like campaign got axed.
Yeah.
And
I'm a big
and
Overwatch fan, so
yeah, you're a big Overwatch fan?
yeah.
No?
Yeah, it's very different in the style that I usually like, but the game's just fun. So I play with my girlfriend all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the game is fun, but like you know what I mean? Like everything is just going in a weird place. Like I don't know, like I don't want to like name too many companies that might, associated with this, so it'd be awkward for you to record a podcast. But you get my point. Like, there's and I guess it's because of like, the capitalistic reasons, which is of course understandable. But basically it's like you ship a really broken game, then in 1 to 2 years you patch it and fix it. And the
Yeah.
game and the games are even getting more expensive. Like it's not the $60 mark anymore. It's like $70, $80 now.
Yeah,
Like
no,
each game.
it's insane. But I get what you mean with immersion because I've talked to a lot of people about this as well because I felt it in the films I've been watching and animations as well. Where since my background is from studying animation, they always said story is king, and that's you hear that from anyone who studied animation. And I think when you elevate everything else to a good story, the character development, the game design, everything follows a good story. And yeah, new titles and stuff, they aren't as interested in first having that good base. So a lot of times, even if the gameplay is amazing, you lose interest in a few days because you're not engaged emotionally with what's happening. And the whole point of art, whether it's games, films, whatever, is to engage an audience emotionally, and that's where the immersion will come from. So yeah, I'm kind of the same because I work mostly in games, but movies is more my true love. And yeah, I hope that there's a sort of a shift where people start to tell good stories again.
Yeah, and like I'm sure there's going to be like a trend in the future more of the games that really kind of blur the lines between the mediums of movies and games. Like I don't know if you played the old Metal Gear Solids, like Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, and just Metal Phantom Pain, any of them.
No.
Like because the brain behind the games, like Hideo Kojima, he's a really huge geek with movies and cinema and stuff like that. So and it's super. Oh my god, you have such a cute French bulldog. Actually, just I have to break the.
Oh yeah, I don't know what she's doing over there.
What's the name?
Mango.
Mango. That's such a cute
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, she's only 7 months old, so she's probably causing havoc over there.
Yeah. And for anyone who's listening on the audio version, you can go to 14 minutes and 15 seconds to see the dog. So you're welcome. And yeah, I was saying because like the Hideo Kojima games are really like that, so you can kind of see like, and it actually works in a weird way. The cutscenes are really long, but because as I said, the immersion factor really stays intact. You kind of enjoy and you're kind of like zoned in on what's going on the screen, and it cuts the gameplay at the best possible moment. Actually, that's an art in itself as well. And another game actually I kind of recommend as well to check as well is honestly one of the best single player games I've ever played. Like, which is a couple of interesting things about it. It's actually Guardians of Galaxy from 2021, and yeah, they have a game by the way. Like, and the game
Yeah.
is just extremely like the art is chef's kiss, like absolutely gorgeous. The gameplay, the writing, the story, the the love that the developers put into it in every single corner and nook and cranny of it, like the things that even most players skip, but they put a like basically the game. It's so obvious that the developers put a ton of love into it, and that's what I love about what makes a game. And it's actually the same thing. It's kind of like cinematic and also as really fun gameplay as well.
Yeah.
And like it's basically 18, 19 hours of a story mode, and like just in the age of like loot boxes and all of that, it's just a gem, honestly. And it's not
Okay,
live
I'm gonna
service,
try
by
that.
the way.
Okay.
And amazing, it has amazing soundtrack as well. Of course, that's what you expect from Guardians of Galaxy. And just play that. Like honestly, like I'm sure you'll love it.
Yeah.
Actually, I funny thing is like when I was playing it, I was like, wait, this art of it sounds familiar, and I was just, God damn it, I had the main concept artist on this game on my podcast like last year. Like
No
Sean Lowe,
way.
yeah, he was on my. He was one of the main concept artists of the game as well. Like, and I was like, this art looks familiar. I'm sure I've seen this before. And then, I downloaded from his art station for the editing of his episode. I was like, that explains.
Yeah, no, when you have so many artists on, you probably don't know.
Yeah.
I always have that thing. I have to put the artist to the artwork to then connect the two and know who's who.
Yeah, it kind of gets like that at some point. And yeah, that game is really good too because every game that I named, they all nail the immersion factor really well.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, I was gonna say the last game for me was probably the PS4 Spider-Man game. Did you play it?
No, but I've seen the
Yeah.
footage.
Yeah, that one, the gameplay, swinging through New York, they like perfected all the physics of it. So, just playing it is really fun. But it's the only video game where I've almost shed a tear because of the story and the way it goes. And again, the way it pulls you in emotionally, it's a really good game to play through. And I had to binge it in the end because, I was playing it in segments, trying to be productive. And in the end, I was like, no, I gotta 5 more hours and I'll just get it out of the way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And yeah, speaking of shedding tears, like Guardians of Galaxy 3 broke me. Like honestly.
I haven't watched it. I've been trying to organize with friends to go to the cinema. So.
Oh yeah, but make sure to watch the first and second movie before you go. By the way. But honestly, you're gonna love it. It was a great movie.
Okay.
I'm sure. And all right, so actually, let's go back to our topic of art and stuff like that. I want to ask you something interesting. How does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a project, like a new project? Well, basically, what does the structure of your pipeline look like? Could you explain?
Okay. Because I work for an outsourcing company, a lot of times the projects on the daily are really different. So, I could be working for like an animated style, I don't know, Disney video game one day, and the next day I'm, doing really more realistic sci-fi for Apex. So the pipeline does change depending on what assignment I have to do. But usually I'll start with I'll give myself a decent amount of time, maybe an hour or so at the beginning of the day to get reference up. So a couple of things that some good mentors have told me is that, concept design is all about problem solving. So you have to define what the problem is, and that is what's the client looking for. So you kind of have to redefine the question of the brief and almost, be analytical about it to see what it is they're trying to solve and how you can give them the best solutions for that. And once you have that question, you can start, exploring reference. And by reference, I mean anything that inspires you for a design. It can be color palettes. It can be, things from nature. Usually I try to stay away from previous designs, unless the client specifically wants a previous design inspiration. I try to look at, random things in life. It could be how a random wooden carved table is shaped, animals, from anything. Just collect that nice big reference board. And usually I don't set myself a limit of how many images. I use pure ref, where you can just drag images from Google, Pinterest, whatever, and then you just pop them on. And usually I end up with like 50 images of things that I might need for a design. And once I have that, usually that's at a stage where I almost want the reference to lead the design. So by the time I have all these images and inspiration, I can already see the design in my head. So in a way, the design is made before I even start drawing. And then once you have all those ideas sort of collected, both mentally and on paper, when you sit down to draw, it just comes out. You don't have that blank page fear. You sit down and then if I'm going into sketching, usually I'll do the classic. I start with the big shapes, silhouette. Again, this is general for, if you're designing a weapon, a character, a creature, this is kind of like the general way I would do it, because it's always changing. But yeah, silhouette, general shapes. I try to start in black and white so I can just focus on shape language mainly. And, go from big shapes to medium to details. Sometimes I don't even put details in the first passes. And yeah, I usually try to go with between 4 to 8 options, depending on the project. But yeah, if you can do 4 really good options for the client, that's usually a good way to go about it.
All right. And now, who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
I think above a lot of them is Ian McCaig. A lot of artists will know him. He designed Darth Maul. He did all the costuming for Padme Amidala in the Star Wars films. I mean, he's done countless things. But what I always liked about his designs is that it's all pencil and paper. Sometimes watercolor, which is even crazier. But I think a lot of time nowadays people get lost in the 3D and the programs. What software do I use? And, you give this guy pencil and paper, and the stuff he comes up with is unbelievable. And also, if you've watched tutorials of him or interviews, the guy is super enthusiastic about what he does, and it's contagious. A lot of times, if I need inspiration, I'll watch an interview with Ian McCaig. It's just his way of viewing everything as of how fun it is to create, because again, you get lost in the corporate world of how you're making commercial art, you're working for somebody else's vision, but at the end of the day, we're drawing things and getting paid, and that's pretty cool. So his beliefs on what it means to be an artist and just a draftsman is something that's always inspired me.
All right, and the next thing I think is going to be like a pretty interesting subject for people to listen to as well, which is the whole concept of fun fact, 2 hours ago, I think I mentioned I recorded another episode. Today you're the second and last episode I'm recording for today, all right? And oh my God, I'm kind of worried about my memory because I forgot his name. This is so awkward. Oh wait, Jonathan Ma. Yes, I didn't. Jonathan Ma, that's what his name is, a 3D environment artist. We were actually talking about this whole thing about making connections and developing soft skills. And that's, as we kind of talked about it, touched upon it briefly before the call. Most artists obviously are, anecdotally, basically from my experience or maybe your experience as well, mostly they're not the most extroverted type, And when it comes to that, it's not just about being introverted, extroverted, but also being a good communicator, But with that subject now open, what do you have to basically say, what stuff that have really helped you and, your personal thoughts on this?
Well, when I started college, coming to Canada as well, I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was going to be everyone trying to meet everybody, that there was going to be events happening. But especially going to Sheridan College, I realized it was a very art-centered college, and a lot of people shied away from meeting up or hanging out, and solely focused on their craft or doing their assignments, their homework. and which obviously is really important. But to me, especially coming to a new country, I wanted to meet new people, kind of expand my social network, because it just makes being in a different country a little less scary. So throughout those 4 years, I really struggled with that, and obviously the pandemic hit, and it kind of shut people off even more. But during the pandemic, I feel like I receded back into my shell because I'm naturally I'm an introvert, but I've tried really hard to work on my social skills and my communication, and to be able to work with people. And so at some point during the pandemic, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw that this artist, Andrew Domachowski, was doing a character design mentorship. And, this guy's done stuff for tons of films. He's a legend in the film industry, stuff for video games as well. And, I feel like a lot of people would just keep scrolling. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to message the guy. Because especially when you're in school, it seems intimidating to reach out to a top senior artist who was worked at ILM. But I kind of took the leap and I was like, okay, whatever. And I messaged him. I took the mentorship, and while doing the mentorship, it was all online. But again, I tried my hardest to sort of get my personality out there, to meet the other students in the class. And eventually that mentorship is what led to me getting the job I have now. Simply by showing that, that I'm hungry to learn, that I take feedback, with the right attitude, and to simply, my dog is like craving my attention.
Can we see the dog as well, by the way? Is that a possibility?
That is a possibility. Aww. Here she is.
Mango.
She's small but chunky. Here she is.
All right. Go to minute 27, audio listeners, if you want to see the doggo.
Okay, let's see if she'll sit still here. So I took this mentorship, and I did my best to work hard, to impress. And, after the mentorship ended, everyone kind of goes their separate ways. Everyone's from different countries. But I chased the guy down. I borderline was harassing Andrew for, can you put me in contact with somebody? I need to get an internship for my course. Can you help me out? And, a lot of people won't respond well to that. They'll feel like you're annoying them. Obviously, you have to do it in a respectful way. But eventually, I hopped in a call with him, and he was able to help me out, put me in contact with someone who's going to look at my portfolio and see if I was the right fit for the studio. And already from that, I got the job. That was a huge thing. But even now, recently, I've just come back from Vancouver, where I was there last week, and I was finally able to meet, people from my studio in person, other artists that work with us. I met my mentor, my art director, and obviously you can't always do it in person, but everyone was so kind to me there and so open to giving opportunities. And you kind of start to realize that you get to a point where everyone is good. You hit a level where people are professional, people can design, they can paint, they can model. And a lot of times it will come down to, if someone knows you and, they simply like the way you work, they're going to think about you first before some random guy who just sent in their portfolio. But so it's not just about, if I go to a convention like Lightbox, a lot of times I try to not talk about art. You have to connect with people because people want to work with, like-minded people and their friends. And so you got to keep it interesting in that way. I don't know. It's a broad subject, so I could ramble on about how to connect with people, but it's just about showing interest, asking questions, and especially with concept design, it's not always about art. It's a lot of times about the world around you. And I found in my recent experiences that if you focus a lot more on what's happening outside the art, they can open up opportunities that you would never expect.
And one thing I need to add, to kind of extend what you said about like you're going to conventions and connect to people, you shouldn't necessarily engineer your behavior and personality to be able to connect with a certain person. Just be yourself, and you're not going to connect with everyone, but you're going to connect with some, and those some are going to be the one who you might actually become friends with. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like human, like it's all very like a normal, like natural obvious thing, but we tend to make it super complicated. Like companies are consist of humans, and humans like humans who are usually friends with. I mean, that's it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't make friends as an opportunistic like intention or something. No, just be yourself. Try to make friends without any expectations. Like try to enjoy the journey. Like I'm sure if anyone has their passion of their work in mind, everything will fit in place and fall in place eventually. So with that in mind, just be yourself. Try to enjoy your time. Don't be afraid of chatting up with people and being friendly. I'm sure most artists aren't like necessarily assholes who might treat like act like a diva. No, maybe there are like maybe few technically, like because there's in every field, right? But just be yourself. Just have fun, enjoy the journey. Honestly,
and to expand on that as well, yeah, that's a great point. That I don't go into it in an opportunistic way. You go into it with the intention of meeting interesting people, simply because you never know what you might find. Like when I first moved to Toronto, there was this older guy wearing an X-Men jacket from the classic '90s show, and I had no idea who the guy was. I just happened to mention that I like his jacket, got into a conversation with him, and turns out I forgot his name now, but he voiced Logan Wolverine in the '90s X-Men show.
Wow.
The guy's from Toronto, and I just ran into him, and again, I'm not an extroverted guy, but if you see something that interests you, you go into it. Again, yeah, like you said, being yourself, and you won't click with everybody, but have the confidence to do it, because eventually you'll find the right people, and sometimes those right people that you connect with will also open up opportunities.
Yeah, and honestly, the world isn't as negative as you might think, because if usually, we don't really take initiative. I mean, I used to be like that, but I'm kind of much better in this, about initiating and meeting people and talking to people. I'm way better than before I was, of course. But like the thing is, we always have this fear of maybe getting rejected in some way or sense or something, or get a bad like experience. But honestly, most people like aren't like that. Don't worry. Just of course, you need to be able to read the room if someone is looking tense, and of course, that you're probably not going to get the best results. But yeah, just some very basic stuff. I mean, just basically, yeah. And well, actually, one other thing I wanted to touch upon is like on your portfolio in our session, there's like this thing called Allspire. Is that your personal board building project, or is it for like
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit about that? Because that looks cool. Like the shots you did.
Okay. Let's see. I'll bring it up so I can.
The thorn upon the land, born to serve, cycle.
Yeah. So that project was actually for our animation course at Sheridan. Our final project was a thesis film, so we had to create a sort of at least minute and a half animated film. And my whole time studying animation, I knew I didn't want to animate. I find it kind of a little bit tedious, and props to everyone who can do it, because to me, animating is hard work. Let me put this dog down. And so the first thing I told my mentor at college was, okay, I'll make the film, but I'm not going to animate. And he said, okay, as long as the story is cool. So my whole idea for it was to make a short film consisting of keyframes that I was going to add sort of parallaxing and movement. So it, to give the illusion of depth and like things are moving, and to have a narrator over the top to tell the story. And that way I can kind of loophole my way around doing animation and focus on design and doing my keyframes. So I kind of took a lot of inspirations from, again, from Star Wars, from dark sci-fi, this idea of, the oppressive ruler. And I haven't released the whole film yet. I'm not sure why. I'll probably release it at some point soon. But it was basically, the basic idea of the story was this world where humans are used as slaves by Hive AI mind, and the Hive AI mind uses this guy, the Overseer, which is this like lumpy fat dude in the keyframes. So they use humans almost as fuel, and in the whole story, there's basically a rise up of the slaves to overthrow the Overseer, and once they have access to sort of the technology the Overseer was using, they get curious, use it, and they become the next Overseer. So it's kind of this. I kind of went into the film with the idea that humanity craves to be ruled. Funnily enough, it's from like something Loki said in the Avengers, that he said that humanity craves rule and to be told what to do. And so it kind of evolved into the classic, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I tried to sort of do a project around that theme. And as I was mentioning before, once I have a narrative, especially a detailed one where I'm writing out the whole narration, it allows me to really expand on that world and see what I'm trying to tell an audience.
Yeah, I mean, the designs look really nice. I mean, by the way, for anyone who's watching audio, you probably don't see it, but for YouTube version, you're seeing it above us, as I mentioned. So yeah, if you're seeing the fat dude on a throne with like things attached to it, that's the one we were talking about.
That's the one.
And yeah, also this was like the thing you did before, but now I was wondering, like, what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? What kind of project is it? I mean, of course, if there's NDAs involved, we can skip right past this question. But aside from Borg stuff, like, do you do any new personal stuff as well? Like, basically, what are you doing right now?
Yeah. Once you work so hard as a young artist to get the job, and once you get the job, as exciting as it is, and you keep trying to do well at it, you realize that it's your job now. And a lot of times I find you have to find that balance where the work you do for clients, that you fulfill what the client wants, but also try to express art in the way you want to do it. But a lot of times those things clash. You're not going to work on stuff that all the time that you enjoy doing, but at the same time, it's all design, it's all problem solving, and trying to find that balance and figure out how to make something they like and that you enjoy creating as well. So with that being said, a few months into work, I realized, I need a new goal, because the goal is always like, okay, I got to get into the industry. And once I was in, I realized that, the learning never stops. And so you kind of have to be a sponge in that way and keep taking everything in. So like right now I'm taking a course with Brainstorm, with ASAN Biglu on creature design. And, with that class, I'm drawing every day. Since I do a lot of digital, I try to get away from that when I'm doing my personal work and jump back on paper. And so currently I'm working on, this class, doing a lot of creature work, which hopefully in the next few months I'll put out there. And slowly figuring out the bones for a new narrative story like the Allspire. Because I don't know, I've talked to a lot of people, and I think with personal work, like as I was saying before, I struggle to sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to draw a cool sci-fi pirate guy, because I have no attachment to what that is. So I have to figure out a story, where he comes from, what his goals are, what his objectives, and to be able to link that to a good design. So definitely I'm still at the stage where I'm doing my work, but I'm trying to be as productive as I can outside of work, to keep growing my portfolio, keep exploring the stuff I want to explore. And yeah, because art is like that, you never stop learning. I'll die before I'm as good as I want to get, because you'll always want to get better.
Yeah, exactly. And now, speaking of art and getting good at art, I want to ask you something else that is actually completely non-art related. What area that are you like? What other thing in life you want to explore and just expand upon further in the future, or maybe even want to right now? That is completely non-art related. It could be like a goal. It could be learning something new. It could be just anything like that, but with the caveats of being completely non-art related.
Completely non-related. Okay. Um, a huge thing for me growing up was football, or soccer, as Americans like to call it. So I played football most of my life, and you get to an age where you have to start making sacrifices. You can't make time for it. So with that, in general, sport is something that and staying active is something that has always fueled me. And because it was always something I did as a kid, I didn't realize how much I needed it until the pandemic hit, and a lot of the opportunities to stay active were taken away, or at least it felt that way. So there's a bunch of sports I still want to try, especially martial arts. I wanted to try boxing or kickboxing for a while, simply because it's a more, my roommate a couple of years ago got me into UFC. And while I'm not a crazy fan of it, where I watch every game, I like the idea of how technical it is, and it's almost like a human chess game, to see what move the other guy makes first. So that's definitely one thing that I'd love to do. I've been getting a lot more back into my love for animals and wildlife. So on my bucket list, I added things like I have to go to a proper African safari and shark diving, which terrifies me, but I'd love to, see a great white shark with my own eyes. That'd be really cool. But yeah, I feel like I'm at a stage where art has become an obsessive thing. So I always do try and see like, okay, what can I do outside of that? And I mean, apart from that, just hanging out with friends that aren't artists. Or if I do hang out with friends that are artists, usually I find that we don't talk about art. We just talk about life stuff, and yeah, have the opportunity to disconnect a little bit.
Yeah, you mentioned your roommate got into UFC. Is that right?
No, he got me into UFC.
I was what the
Yeah,
fuck?
no.
You have like a roommate that have like
No.
Yeah, actually, like just a suggestion. Actually, like maybe we could talk about this more later after the podcast. But yeah, like starting with striking is really good. But honestly, like if you want to try MMA even like amateur level, like the best like surefire way to get better results. I mean, of course, they're subjective, but based on like most like even like a lot of top athletes say that just start with grappling first, because that's like one of the key things in like fight in the art of fighting in general. Because with good grappling, like you can get away with a lot of stuff. But don't get me wrong, striking has its own place, but grappling is something else. Like you better, and of course, the best thing for anyone who's also beginner into martial arts to begin with is jiu-jitsu. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and it's like because it's actually legit effective. Like it's like math, 2 + 2 is 4. Jiu-jitsu is effective, kind of like that. But like judo is really good too. Like wrestling is really good too. But yeah, wrestling is another one of those things. Like if you're actually become really good at wrestling, have a base of wrestling and add a little bit of jiu-jitsu on top is better than have a base of jiu-jitsu and have a little bit of wrestling on top, in my opinion, based on my experience. Because like actually just a side note, like in the 4 years I've been in Istanbul, actually the first 2 years I didn't do any art at all. My whole plan was to become an actual fighter. Like I was training nonstop. Wow. And even had seminars, with 4 champions and everything, that came into Istanbul. And yeah, COVID hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
And
ruined
yeah,
sports for all of us.
but I mean, I'm kind of glad because it led my life to the thing that was supposed to, you know. And I
Yeah.
realized, like, sure, my whole reasoning was I have my youth only once, so I'm gonna go all in on sports, and later on, if I fail, you can even start art in 30s. Sure, it might get discouraging when you see a 14, 13-year old, like, you know, do great job, and you're 30 years old and trying to start from same place. That mentally kind of messes with you, but still, it's doable. But with
Yeah.
sports are really ruthless and brutal. Like, if you miss your peak ages, like, it's done, honestly.
Yeah. But I think that's why I want to, I'm only 24, and it's something, you know, even if you want to dedicate yourself to a craft like art, I feel like doing sport is something that should just continue for as long as you can move. Um, and I try to go to the gym, but the lack of competition, I think, is a big thing for me. Sure, people say compete with yourself, but I like competing against others too.
Yeah, I get that.
In a fun way. It doesn't have to be in a
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
No, it can also be in a mean way. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but honestly, I believe like anyone. I'm not even talking about art. If you're trying to, let's say, I don't know, like you're getting at cooking, coding, or just, you know, anything like, you know, math. It's better to grow your like improve and upgrade your brain in different ways. Like, sure, you're getting good at art, but try to have something else to get improved at. So when you're not doing art, your brain is constantly trying to, like, for me, there's two things that I absolutely, I mean, love it, and I see, and I listen, I will do them regardless, even if I don't, even if I lose all the matches I get into. One of them is chess, and one of them is, like, of course, fighting, you know, and just martial arts. And I generally love them. I love the process of it. Like, I don't have my ego attached to it that much. Like, I even like trash talk to get a fight with someone who's more experienced than me, because for the fun of it, you know. Because like the whole process is just a fun game to me, you know, both with chess and also like with, you know, fighting. And like during the whole process is fun for me, you know. So the result is like a bonus if I win, you know.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds weird to a lot of people, but that's just how my brain is, I guess. Like
Well, I think it's because because I've been doing art most of my life, it's sad, but it does get to a point where you have to make sure it stays a passion and it doesn't become just work. And I find it extremely hard to sit down and draw just for fun. Every time I'm thinking, oh, is this going to go on ArtStation? Is it going to go on my portfolio? And when you try something new, you take that pressure off. And it kind of makes learning easier because you just continue trying because you take the fear factor away from it. And I think that's why doing something like sports or chess becomes a good distraction and a good way to use your brain differently.
Oh, she's getting kind of. Oh, sorry. Is it he or she for the dog?
She
Oh, yeah, she.
They put her outside because she's got.
No worries. Take your time.
Before she pees on the carpet. Okay. Sorry about that.
Damn, it's sunny outside, right?
It's sunny and it's getting hot. Yeah, it's getting really hot.
Yeah. It gets really humid there, right?
Yeah. In Toronto it gets, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can also reach like almost 30. So we got the minus 20s and then up to 30.
And of course, for American listeners, we're talking about Celsius, by the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to clarify on that. And yeah. And honestly, I think we've reached the final question and section of the podcast, which is called Time Capsule. All right, just let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're in the escape pod of a ship, the spaceship, and you're stuck. And there's a countdown timer that's only has a few minutes and it's just counting to zero. And once it reaches zero, you're going to get ejected to the space, and you're probably going to starve to death, and no one's going to hear or see you ever again. All right, so with that existential fear in mind, you have, in this time, you kind of have access to some devices and console logs of the spaceship. You can record some voice messages or video calls or whatever. And in those moments, your last moments, what did you say from yourself, a human being, to another human being? Like your last words. And basically, to anyone, and that another human being is anyone who's going to watch that and or listen to that. In that situation, what did you have to say? Imagine like it's going to be your kind of your best advices from your whole essence of your life experience, basically.
Damn, that's a loaded question. What a way to go. I'm out in space. Wow. Okay. Let me think about this for a second. Last words type of thing. Damn. I should have seen what other people said. This is a good question.
Just one thing, don't worry if your answer is going to be cliche, like at all. Because that's what most people say.
I think I would say be careful how you use time. I'm at a point now where I'm 24. To a lot of people, that sounds probably really young, but it's sort of the age where you just come out of being a kid. You're not a kid anymore. You have to start acting like an adult. And it's when I feel like it first starts coming into perspective how quickly time goes. So I think be really aware of using your time to do things that you enjoy, that make you happy. The cliche of using your time to spend it with people that you want to spend it with. If something's giving you grief and there's nothing, there's no real reason for it, then, try to get rid of those things in your life, and don't waste time too. It doesn't mean you have to be productive all the time. If you need a rest, there's some days where you just, you have to sit on the couch and watch some Netflix and just chill out. But you be careful what you do with the time, because it's probably it's the most valuable currency we have, right? It's something that we can't get back. So, to sum it up, use time wisely.
All right. I think that was actually perfect and so true as well. Honestly, thanks so much for coming by. It was a real pleasure. It was a great episode. Where can people contact you if they had any questions? Is there an Instagram account? Okay. By the way, it's mentioned in the captions as well for anyone who's listening.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope it was an interesting podcast for everybody. And if you want to contact me, you can just, go to the DMs on Instagram. You can shoot me an email if it's something a little bit more professional, but Instagram is perfect.
All right, awesome. Again, thanks so much for coming by, and thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode. And yes, episode 234 and 32 were recorded in a span of 4 hours, and no, that's not the only t-shirt I have. It's just because of that. And sorry if I kind of sometimes sounded a bit tired in these 2 episodes, by the way, to anyone who's listening and thought that was annoying. Sorry about that. I'll try to recharge later for later episodes. And as always, if there's any comments, suggestions, leave them down in the comment section down below, or you can just shoot me a message. And with that being said, take care everyone and stay safe. Bye.
Thanks so much.